My friends and I decided to rent a cabin in the woods, away from the city noise and endless work stress. There were 4 of us: me, Sarah, David, and Mia. The plan was simple: relax, go hiking, and enjoy a few days without cell service. The cabin was charming but isolated. It sat at the edge of a dense forest, with a narrow dirt road leading to it. The air smelled of pine and damp earth, and the only sounds were birds and the occasional rustle of leaves. When we arrived, we quickly settled in, unpacked our food, and argued over who got which room. By late afternoon, we decided to explore the nearby hiking trails. The first one we picked was easy, winding through tall trees and over small streams. We laughed, took pictures, and talked about how great it felt to be away from everything. But as the sun started to dip lower in the sky, things got strange. We were heading back to the cabin when we heard it, a faint voice calling out. It was coming from deeper in the woods. At first we thought it was another hiker, maybe lost or in trouble. "Hello?" David shouted. The voice called back, mimicking his tone exactly. "Hello?" We all stopped, exchanging uneasy glances. "Did that sound weird to you?" Mia asked. "It's probably an echo," Sarah said, though she didn't sound convinced. David shouted again, this time louder. "Is someone there?" The voice replied, still distant, still matching his tone perfectly. A nervous laugh escaped me. "Okay, that's creepy." "It's just an echo," Sarah insisted. "Let's keep moving." But the voice followed us. Every time one of us spoke, it repeated our words, perfectly mimicking our tone, our volume, even our hesitations. It wasn't the kind of echo you'd expect in a canyon or over water. It was too clear, too precise. By the time we reached the cabin, the sun had set and the woods were dark. The voice had stopped, but the unease lingered. We locked the doors and decided to brush it off. Maybe it really was some kind of weird echo, or maybe someone was playing a prank on us. That night, as we sat around the fireplace, the mood began to lighten. David cracked jokes, Sarah and Mia argued over who made the best s'mores, and I started to think we'd all just imagined the voice. Then, a knock came at the door. We froze. It was late. Too late for anyone to be wandering around out here. David stood and walked to the window, peeking out. "There's no one there," he said, frowning. "Maybe it was an animal," Sarah suggested. But the knock came again, louder this time. Mia grabbed a flashlight and opened the door just enough to shine it outside. The porch was empty. The flashlight beam swept over the trees, the dirt road, the edge of the forest. Nothing. "Probably just the wind," she said, closing the door quickly. But we all felt it, that creeping, skin-crawling sensation that comes when something isn't right. The next morning, we decided to forget about the weirdness and head out for another hike. The trail we picked this time was steeper, leading up to a small clearing with a view of the entire valley. The air was crisp, and for a while, everything felt normal again, until we heard the voice. It started faint, like the day before, calling out from deeper in the forest. But this time, it didn't mimic us. It said things we hadn't said. "Where are you going?" it called. We stopped in our tracks. The voice sounded almost familiar, but none of us could place it. "Who's there?" David shouted. The voice didn't answer. Instead, it started laughing, soft at first, then louder, echoing around us. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was cold, sharp, like it was mocking us. Mia grabbed my arm. "Let's go back," she whispered, her voice trembling. We didn't argue. We turned around and started walking quickly, almost running, back toward the cabin. But the voice followed, its tone shifting, growing angrier, more urgent. "Don't leave," it shouted. "Come back!" By the time we reached the cabin, we were out of breath and on edge. We locked the doors, closed the curtains, and sat together in the living room, trying to make sense of what was happening. The voice had stopped again, but the silence felt worse, heavy and oppressive. That night, none of us could sleep. Around midnight, I got up to get a glass of water and saw Sarah standing by the window, staring out into the dark. "Can't sleep?" I asked. She didn't respond. I stepped closer, and that's when I realized something was wrong. Her body was rigid, her hands pressed against the glass. Her lips were moving, but no sound came out. "Sarah?" I said, shaking her shoulder. She turned slowly to face me, her eyes wide and unfocused. "It's here," she whispered. "What's here?" I asked, panic rising in my chest. Before she could answer, the knock came again. 3 sharp raps on the door. This time, it didn't stop. It was followed by another knock on the window, then another at the back door. We huddled together, too afraid to move, as the knocks grew louder and more frantic. And then, all at once, they stopped. When morning finally came, we packed up and left without saying much to each other. None of us wanted to admit how scared we were. As we drove away, I looked back at the cabin, half expecting to see someone or something standing on the porch, but it was empty. We never talked about that trip again. But every now and then, when I'm alone at night, I hear it, the faint sound of a voice calling my name from far away.